Hey everybody, welcome to the Copilot Exchange. This is Stephen, and today I want to dive a little bit deeper into identifying gaps and what it means to change the resolution on your chart so you can hopefully spot more gaps, and that'll help kind of tune in your trading strategy. So this stock I have been following since about February. It's YRIV Port and Logistics, and the thing that caught my eye initially was that it just took a huge dive, and when I looked at the daily chart, the overall kind of max chart, I noticed that, man, this stock really makes some major moves to the up and down side. And I got in at Yangtze a while ago at about 55 cents average, and I've been in and out of this stock a few times. Right now I'm actually out of the stock, but I have my eyes on it. I'm still closely watching it as I think there's still some heavy potential here. So if we're looking at the daily chart and starting to kind of zoom in on the massive short that happened in December 2018, we don't really see any gaps in between these candles forming, and that's because we're looking at the daily. So we're going to increase our resolution a little bit and go to a 30-minute chart, and that's going to kind of help us extract and pull out some gaps that started to form in the last major short that occurred with this stock. So when a gap forms, what you're looking for is validation that the gap has filled or not. So like we see a gap up here between this candle and this candle. But if I were to draw that gap, you can clearly see that a few days later, this candlestick fills that gap and validates the gap. So that's not actually a gap we're going to be looking for. We're only looking for gaps that are still open. And so here's a gap. Here's a gap. Here's a gap. Here's a gap, hasn't been closed yet. None of these gaps have been closed. I could go on and on, but here, let's take a look at this one last example to prove the point here. See this gap? Price action came back and filled it. So this gap is no longer really relevant to us as it's already been filled. There are a few more gaps, as you can see. I'm where my mouse is kind of pointing. That you can identify. So we can draw these out really quickly. And I could go on and on. There's a couple more actually, so why not? This one actually got partially filled. But let's keep testing this gap theory as we go along through time. So here's a gap, but look at what happened over here. Gap happened in February, but we actually just filled that gap with recent price action in April. So this gap is no longer relevant. It's no longer relevant to me. Here's another nice, and I'm showing you these gaps over and over again because it really pays to understand that gaps tend to fill. So right off the bottom of that huge short, Yangtze does a little bit of a bounce here, creates a gap up. Well, guess what? If you gapped up right here, it would have been a good idea. Whenever you gap up, it's a good idea to think about selling because you can expect a retracement. And you can buy at the bottom of that retracement. And I'll tell you exactly how I did this in the last 2 weeks. I've been in and out of Yangtze a few times for profit. So this gap has clearly been, we gapped up and it clearly got filled before its next rise. So I'm going to remove this gap because it's not really valid for us. And we'll start to look at the most recent gaps in YRIV. So we had a gap up, and this is where I made my first profit. My entry point was somewhere down in the mid-50s, and then I took profit somewhere in the $1.70 range, my first time around. But I noticed when we gapped up that, my intuition was telling me we gapped up really hard. I'm going to sell at the top of one of these candles and wait for a retracement, and that's exactly what happened. I drew this line. See how it's at $1.16? That's exactly where I rebought. As soon as we cleared, we refilled this gap. I bought at the bottom of the gap when I saw that. If you look a little bit closer, you start to see that the candles are they're really starting to reinforce form a little bit of support here around 113 to 116, somewhere in this area. So I saw that support form and I bought right around this time frame, and then we cleared the gap and I sold again once we cleared the gap. Now I'm waiting and watching YRIV at this $1.45 level. I think pre-market right now it's $1.40 because my bottom line is I'm looking for a retracement to previous support. I really think this is a high value stock in the $1 area. That's my personal opinion. And I think that if you back out once again, look at all these gaps I drew, If this price action reaches these gaps, it will rocket straight through it. And the reason why is if you're playing gaps, and I've highlighted it for you, once a stock has started to fill a gap, it will rarely stop because there's often no immediate support or resistance. And that's the play that we're making here. We're looking for a stock that has taken a huge dive, and in so doing has created a ton of gaps, and therefore no resistance once the stock recovers. And that's why, if you look at Yangtze on the daily chart, you'll see these massive, massive rises in recovery after shorts. So good thing to keep your eye on. And once again, when I backed out to the daily, you can see we can't spot those gaps anymore. So it really pays sometimes to, if you're charting, to dive a little bit deeper into your resolution. Don't just look at one type of chart. Look at try to get a perspective from several different time frames. And that'll help you do a little bit more accurate charting and analysis. So I hope this was helpful to you. If you're in YRIV, good luck to you. I will be watching it closely and probably doing some more videos if I make a re-entry. Okay, see you on the other side.